Reading today from excerpts from Matthew chapter 2. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may go and pay him homage." When the Magi had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over a place where a child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. In entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now, after the Magi had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel, to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth. Stories we've heard many times can still have power to move us.
Thank you, Steve. When you think about it, we really do live in our own worlds. We see things from our own perspective, based on our experiences, our knowledge, our choices, and what we're looking for. Life is about bridging between our worlds, building bridges, so to speak. The first bridge we built is between our inner world and our outer world, and then building bridges between ourselves and other people's worlds as they invite us in or keep us out. Oprah Winfrey says, "Passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you." Let's look at the Epiphany in that light. Look at the Magi. What excites them? What are they passionate about? They've been doing research, apparently, they've been studying, and they want to find this newborn king of Israel, the king of the Jews. And so they set out. Nothing stops them. We don't know where they traveled from exactly, but they're determined. They're filled with energy, no matter what happens on the road, to find this one. And so, can you feel their excitement? They're passionate about this. Have you ever been passionate about finding something or doing something or going somewhere that filled you with energy so that no matter what happened in between, you were still determined you were going to achieve that particular thing? And so they go, and the star leads them and stops in Jerusalem. And so they ask, where is this king? They ask the people as they enter the city, and they're directed to Herod. They get advice from Herod, and they go outside, and again the star reappears. Can you feel their excitement at the star reappearing? We're on the right track. We're on the right track. And the star stops over the house. And scripture says they were overwhelmed with joy. Have you ever experienced that kind of overwhelm? Maybe you saw someone you hadn't seen for years, a friend you had lost touch with. Maybe it was when your first child was born, that overwhelming joy. Maybe it was you achieved something you'd been working on very, very hard. Touch that joy. That's what happened as they recognized Jesus, this king, was born. Now let's go back and look at Herod. How are Herod and his people reacting to the news that a king is born? It says they were all disturbed. They felt fear. Why would they feel fear? A new king? That means competition, rivalry, war, displacement. And for Herod, the end of power, perhaps? Can you feel that fear of being displaced? Or something in the future going to happen that's going to hurt you? Now look again, it's the same event. Jesus is born. But look at the two perspectives. That's what changes the situation. So it's not the situation itself that creates the problem. It's the perspective that Herod has about the situation. And sometimes we need to look at a situation that we're in from a different perspective. We don't always face huge traumas like Herod and the wise and Magi, but in smaller things, how does that happen? And you know what was happening to Herod was he was afraid of losing his power because his energy really came from dominating the people. And so he was taking their energy from it, using it to his own benefit. And sometimes in our own world, as we try to create energy, and we do create energy by how we use our power. But there's a story that comes, it's an ancient story from India about a master and his intern. And the master's a little upset because the intern is always complaining. There is nothing ever right. And so the master says to the intern, I want you to get a handful of salt and a cup of water and bring it to me. And so the intern does. The master says, all right, put the salt into the cup and drink. And of course, the intern takes one sip and it's so bitter. He said, I can't drink it. Okay, said the master. Now go back and get another handful of salt and follow me. And so the intern goes back and gets a handful of salt and follows the master to a lake. The master says, throw the salt in the lake. The intern does. The master says, now drink from the lake. And so the intern kneels down, picks up water in his hand, it dribbles down his chin, he tastes it. The master says, well, he said, it's fresh. The master says, exactly. Now broaden your view like the lake. So sometimes when we find ourselves complaining about little things, what's really happening underneath is we're feeling a lack of energy. Either we're bored or nothing excites us, or we feel a lack of control of a situation. And so it's easier to complain about little things than to broaden our view about where all of this fits into the world of things. Let's look again at the responses. The Magi are elated. This is a wonderful gift for them. They found what they searched for, but they have one more thing to do. They need to go back to Herod because Herod asked them to come back, but they're warned in a dream to go home another way. So they're skilled in finding their way by observing the constellations, and they go home with happy hearts, even though they have to go a different way and uh, find new signposts for themselves. With happy hearts, they return home. Herod's response? He's not elated. He's waiting for them to return and then figures out he's been outwitted. And what happens from his perspective? The fear sets in. The energy of fear sets in. Let's look at the power of fear and energy. Mark Nepo, who has studied years and years and years and was very, very sick for a long time and a lot of pain, and faced a lot of fears, has studied all religions because what he was looking for is some commonality among them all. And he says what he finally came to the conclusion is our life is about a choice between love and fear. And he says, now, love doesn't mean, oh, everything's wonderful, there's no problem, everything just working out just fine, and we're completely oblivious to the reality. He said, that's not love. He said, no, love means looking carefully and clearly at the situation and making a choice not based on fear, but based on love. In other words, what has meaning for you? Because he said, if you base your decision and your actions and your responses on fear, and you say to fear, what shall I do in this situation? And fear will say to you, oh, I thought you'd never ask. Be more fearful. And so you can overwhelm yourself with fear. Now, there's a legitimate place for fear. It alerts us to danger, and we need to be smart and discover what that alert is about. But then we need to go to a deeper place within us because it's not fear that's going to motivate us to move, although sometimes that's the immediate reaction. We've got to get out of this place because it's falling down or whatever. But we need to move to a deeper motivation. What has meaning for you? And in this situation, what is it that you need to do based on what has meaning for you? How is the Holy One, the light, residing in you? What is a touchstone within you that you can refer to. Maybe it's a favorite quote. Maybe it's a passage that you read someplace that gives you a sense of groundedness, a sense of presence, a sense of being not alone. So when you find yourself in a place of fear, maybe a fear that you've created by saying, oh, what if, come back to the present moment and say, okay, I'm here in the present moment. I need to enlarge my view and not live out there in those what ifs, but come back to the present moment and start with what I have. As um, Arthur Ashe says, start where you are, here now. Use what you have, touch those deep places within you, and then do what you can. Another way to look at fear and energy is to think about electricity. Now, electricity has to be grounded. So when you put in the plug for the coffee maker, you're not electrocuted. It's got to be grounded so that the excess energy that the appliance doesn't need, the excess energy is going to be going into the ground where it's distilled. Now, when we get into a sense of fear, we have a lot of extra energy around us. And we can either allow it to electrocute us, in a sense, overwhelm us completely, or ground it by going back to the center, to the place where you are grounded, centered in the Holy One, protected in the Holy One. And that does not always mean everything works out in a rosy manner, but it does mean that we are not alone in the situation, that we do what we can, and God takes care of the rest. So if you find yourself in the midst of a fearful situation or in the what ifs kinds of things, acknowledge it. Yes, I'm afraid. Now, what am I going to do about it? And fear is to be moved through, not obeyed. Moved through, not obeyed. We move forward with energy that comes from deep within us, not from being overwhelmed by fear. So we are called to work with power and energy and to help one another to be this light for the world. That's what we're called to do. And to share the energy and power. How do we help one another achieve this without going into power plays and taking away energy from others? And we say, well, I don't take energy away from others. All right, here's a very simple example. Someone comes to you and they say, oh, I just discovered that, and they tell you something about what they discovered about the hummingbirds. They're so excited about it, something they didn't really understand before. And you say, oh, didn't you know that? I've known that for years. So what has just happened in that scenario? They came with energy to share with you something that was new for their experience, and you just deflated their energy, took it away, and are now in power, in control of the situation because you know better than they do. That's deflating the energy. See, there are simple ways that we help one another by respecting the level of growth and the process of growth that people have, just as we would like people to respect our own energy level. We all have, as we all rise to our level of incompetence. You know, we're very good at some things, and then we reach a level where um, we're no longer competent in that field or no longer competent with the information and the knowledge and the experience we have. And so then we move into the unknown, to learning more. That's how the energy is developed. And it's in recognizing when we get into a situation where we have to be right. That's power grabbing. And that's not what we're about. It doesn't matter whether we're right or wrong. The working with power and energy is about discovering together, problem solving together. We each see from our own perspective. And sometimes the perspective that somebody has is exactly what you need to look at. So as we look at the Magi, we looked at the Magi, how elated they were with happy hearts going home. Herod, not so happy. And we look at Mary and Joseph. And Joseph receives word that he is to get up and take the child and Mary and go to Egypt. Now, you would think that God, taking care of Jesus, would make some other kind of arrangements, but that's not always how God works. God counts on us. Just as he did with Mary and Joseph, he says, okay, go into Egypt. Can you feel the fear in Joseph's heart as he says to Mary, we need to go to Egypt because Herod is seeking Jesus to do away with him? How would you feel if you were Mary or Joseph? How would you feel? Sense that fear. And so they get up in the middle of the night immediately. I suppose they take with them gold, frankincense, and myrrh. At least they have something. But they're going into the night, into Egypt, a place they don't know about. And perhaps on the way, because their whole life has been one of surprises, one of a different way of doing things than they had really planned. And that faith within them, that reliance on God, doing what they need to do and relying on God as they move forward into Egypt. For how long? God says, stay there until I tell you. And so they do the best they can with what they have. They use their power and energy, not giving over to fear, but reaching into that deep place where the Holy One dwells, facing fear and moving through it. Not easy, and it takes practice in little things. So they trust as they did with the journey to Bethlehem. There was no room for them there. They were flexible. Now they're into Egypt. We have one event, the birth of Jesus. Three different perspectives, three different responses. What is your scenario that you're in right now? What are you facing? What disturbs you? What frightens you? You know, they say that there's 366 places in the scripture where the words do not be afraid are uttered. It's like one for every day and an extra one. 366. And do not be afraid means there's nothing to be afraid. Does not mean there's nothing to be afraid of, but it means, yes, there's fear here, but I am with you. I am with you. Emmanuel, God with us. And so as you look at life from your own perspective and you realize how important it is to use energy and power, how are you going to move forward to uplift and bring light to the world in which you live and the world around us? Because that is what we're called to do by this God who loves us beyond all measure. Amen. So, as you reflect on the Epiphany, the shining upon, what comes to your mind this morning? Christina?
Yeah, something with the energy and deflating somebody's energy came to mind. I read a book years ago that was talking about stealing people's energy. And it was an eye-opener at the time, and I found it so true because there's a chain reaction, and we can influence more than just the people we immediately react with. And it was giving the example that if I wake up in a bad mood and I snap at Keith for something in the morning, then I'm stealing his energy. And his tendency will be to refill his cup of energy. So he will probably snap at somebody else. And it's this chain reaction when instead we need to always try to fill each other's energy up, say something positive, instead of like, you made the coffee too weak again, just little things. And I've since noticed how, when that happens, it's really like, yeah, I woke up in a good mood. Now what happened? And so, when people say you can influence the world, you can influence, peace in the world just by what you're doing in your small family, it is so true. I found that so true that, your energy can be stolen and you can easily steal others people's energy. So we need to think twice before we speak and interact with others.
Thank you, Christina. That's a great example of the energy play. Yes, thank you. And it's so nebulous because you can't see it, but once you're aware of it, you do see it. And one more thing, that is the call. That is love, is learning how to use that energy. Yes, thank you.
Jackie,
Ross?
I was thinking of something my mother used to say to me all the time. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Maybe all of you have heard that from your family or parents or teachers or something, but it's really very true, isn't it? And
Yes,
it's
it
very
is.
simple. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Yes, thank you, Roz. Yes. I think that is something all mothers say, reading a book or something.
It's in the mother book. But it really works.
Yes.
And it's the same thing you're saying, basically.
Anyone else like to share?
Okay.
Lori? Oh, sorry. Lori, and then Steve.
You were talking about worrying about something that might happen and how that kind of takes your energy, right? If you're worrying about things in the future. And when I kind of get off on that tangent, I always think of what Maria says. She always says, that's a tomorrow problem. You don't have to take that on today.
Good.
And that's helpful just to think about that for me because I am a person that worries. And my friend who had told me don't pay the bills before they're due. Just take care of today and wait. So.
Right. Good advice. Thanks, Lori. Yes. Those are some nice quotes we can tuck away for ourselves. Steve?
Yeah. I was thinking when someone does share something that has energized them, that they are sharing their energy with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gift. And if you don't accept it, then you are rejecting that gift. And looking at it that way, I when someone has shared good news with me, or told me about something that's going to be coming up, that's going to be they're really happy about or something, it always makes me feel better. It makes me want to say that how much it's really great because they've given me something that has maybe brightened my day a little bit more because someone else has gained something. I've had people actually ask me why I feel that way. And, because they don't understand it. But it's to be happy about somebody else's happiness. And just as we are taught to empathize and share someone's sorrows, not to fix it, but to be there.
Mm-hmm.
This is the other side of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
So to try to look at it that way is a way to be thankful for that sharing, that excitement. And whether it is something new to you or not, really doesn't make any difference because they've received something and they've given part of it to you.
Good. Thank you, Steve. Learning to rejoice in other people's happiness. Yes, thank you. And it is a gift. Christina?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to what Lori said about the worries and fears and anxieties. My granddaughter was diagnosed with OCD, and one thing they told her in counseling, and Jenny shared it with me, was to give that voice within that gives you all that worry and what if, and do you need to wash your hands one more time, or what will happen if I don't do this? Give that voice inside her a name. So she named her voice Karen. And now the family knows that. And Jenny says there are days when, the OCD is threatening to take over, and they just have to say, Karen, not now. Or Karen, your input is not wanted. And it works. So, and I have started doing that sometimes when my worries take over, it's like Lori said, it's a tomorrow problem, not now. So for anybody out there with similar, with anxieties or worries, maybe that'll help. Give that voice inside you a name and tell it to shut up when you need to.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, it does help to name it, doesn't it? Then it gives you something concrete, something positive that you can do about it, a choice you can make. Yeah, good. Thank you, Christina. Any other comments? What wonderful